You're listening to Alcoholics Alive, where recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous share their experience on how they live AA as a way of life. None of our participants get paid or speak for AA. Here are your hosts, Shank and Wayne. So Shank, last week with Heather,
Yes.
we reviewed the mottos from the Family Afterward.
Yes.
So listen, I've looked up the term motto.
Okay.
A short sentence or phrase chosen as encapsulating the beliefs or ideals guiding an individual, family, or institution. So at least in 1939, somebody chose those three mottos as a guiding belief of the institution of Alcoholics Anonymous. So you got to start using them more. Like easy does it. First things first.
Live and let
And
live.
Heather's favorite, live and let live.
There you go.
So anyway, I think we kind of agreed that we were going to start using those instead of meeting makers make it and put the plug in the jug.
90 and 90.
90 and 90, all those things. Oh, anyway, that's what a motto is. So AA's got three mottos, and they're apropos according to the book. I need to look up apropos because I'm not really sure what that means. I got that fifth grade education. I'm waiting for the PLBB to come out. We've got a great guest today. Julie, are you still in Pennsylvania?
I am, yes.
Okay, well, hey, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, thanks for having me. Honored to be here. My name is Julie, and I am an alcoholic. And my sobriety date is June 12th, 1995. And I have a home group and a sponsor and all those things. Active in Alcoholics Anonymous. And how did I get here? My life was a train wreck. I mean, like I was in bad shape, man. Like I ended up in a blackout for almost 2 weeks. I don't remember much of it. I don't remember my last drink. I remember my last coming to, but I don't remember my last drink, which thank God that's not a requirement to getting sober. And I was still employed, but barely. I had locked myself in my apartment. I had trash piled up on the balcony. I had, I was not answering the door. The blinds were closed. It was June, and I came to again, and nothing was different than any other time I had come to, and woke up and like, where's the car? What happened? How do I get out of work? All the things we do. What wreckage did I cause last night? And I was done. I said, God, please help me. And I didn't even really believe in God. I just couldn't do it another day. So you talk about grace. I didn't do anything to get that. Nothing. And I had that little window, and 2 days later I was in a rehab, and convinced I just needed to deal with my other issues, but alcohol was never a consideration for me stopping. So I landed in rehab as a drug addict and not an alcoholic. And 30 days later, I realized I was both, and that I had a lot more work to do, and my life was going to look very different than I thought it would when I walked into rehab, just trying to manage everything, just trying to get a hold of things, and I got out, and they said, go to outpatient. And so I went there, and they said, go to AA. I said, no way, I'm not going to AA. And, but I wanted to drink every second of every day. This right when I got out of rehab. When I left, I was like, I got this, and then I got home and I'm like, I do not have this at all. And wanted to drink, wouldn't go to AA. Finally went, walked in the room, walked around the table, walked out the door, wanted to drink, judged everyone. I don't belong here. I'm 27, I got this short little mini skirt on, looking for a man, didn't really find one. So I left. And, but I wanted to drink, and I knew I was in trouble. And so I went back and I stayed, and I have since. And it has been a incredible, life-changing, everything in my life is different than it was. And it's a result of Alcoholics Anonymous. So a lot more
Well,
to
thank
say,
you.
but that's
Yeah, yeah.
the short of it.
Well, thanks for that. We're glad you stayed.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised you couldn't find a man though at those early meetings. I mean,
Me
that's.
too.
I think Heather said she found one the first night or something. Some dude living in a halfway house or something.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, think about that's probably a good thing you didn't because
Mhm.
something probably would have changed differently.
Mhm.
So we're glad that you're here. Thanks for joining us. Shank, what's our topic?
Our topic today is to employers. This season, we have used the titles of the chapters in the big book as our um, episode topics. So today, our reading comes from page 146 in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, the fourth edition. And it says, as a class, alcoholics are energetic people. They work hard and they play hard. Your man should be on his mettle to make good. Being somewhat weakened and faced with physical and mental readjustment to a life which knows no alcohol, he may overdo. You may have to curb his desire to work 16 hours a day. You may need to encourage him to play once in a while. He may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and something of the sort may come up during business hours. A reasonable amount of latitude will be helpful. This work is necessary to maintain his sobriety.
Hmm.
Do you all have any comments on the reading?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak both from being an employee and being an employer on this. So I have a feeling it'll go back and forth here. But for me, from an employee standpoint, when I got sober and my job was held for me, I didn't deserve that either. I dove into work. I replaced the alcohol with work. I mean, I went after it like a vengeance. I did not have anybody telling me to take more time to play. They were my, it was my father too, but he was psyched. He's like, go, keep selling, just keep on going. So I did. And and it for me in the course of my sobriety has been certainly an issue with overworking. I'm an overachiever, just like most of us, right? And so I will just go at it and I won't quit until, whatever. So, but also having had employees that I've walked through this with, I've certainly had to, not had to, wanted to give them whatever room they needed to recover, and that meant time away from work. And that meant, in some cases, me kind of forcing their hours back because they were just like me. They got out and they're like, oh my God, like I can show up for work and I can make more money and I can, be successful. And, when I'm not hungover and or drinking, like it's pretty amazing what we can do when we show up.
Yeah.
So I've had to, and I've been very fortunate to walk, not a huge amount of people. I had about 100 people in my company. So 4 or 5 of them. And so 2 of them got sober and the other 3 didn't. And I had to let them go. So, but the ones that got sober, kind of whatever they needed, I said yes. And I created a space where they felt comfortable talking to me. I didn't tell anybody in my company for a long time that I had a problem or that I went to rehab. We kept it all hush, hush, hush. And I don't know. I was just trying to think back on that time, and I don't know if that was it was mostly me. I was afraid. I was afraid of being judged. I partied with a lot of these people, and so it was obvious to everybody because I like and I was sleeping with half of them. So I mean, like it was like all of a sudden my behavior totally changed. So it was kind of obvious, but I was very intimidated and afraid and didn't want it to look bad on my family and all that. So I kept it quiet for a long, long, long time. And once I became more open about it, then employees started to come to me with problems. So shocking, right?
Well, that does bring us to one
Yeah.
of my questions for you all, which is how long should you wait before telling your employer or coworkers about your alcoholism?
It's a good
So
question.
it sounds like maybe, Julie, you were thinking you could have said something sooner. Not that you can go back and change anything, but
Oh yeah, I should have actually because nobody was surprised.
Well, they probably knew, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it would have removed this heaviness around all of it, for me. It would have made it a lot easier for me. And today I tell anybody, like, I don't care,
Yeah.
but I really cared when I got out. So I think it's very individual. I think it depends on the environment that you're in, and it depends on your employer. And, obviously if you're with an employer that wants you to keep it hush, I think
Yeah.
it's very individual. I wish I had done it sooner. And when I was bringing new people on, the first chance that I got that made sense, I would say something about me not drinking anymore. So,
Yeah. It's probably best case by case. I think in general, in most cases, probably as soon as possible. But I've never really told this story much because it can get long. But my I did most of my drinking when I was in the Air Force, and so I was hiding from the Air Force. But there were also people that I worked under that drank like I did, so we all kind of took turns hiding, trying to protect each other, I guess would be the right word. So when I got discharged out of the Air Force, and I was trying to find a job, and I had gotten this job interview with this cell phone company, and I missed the interview because I started celebrating early the night before and didn't make it.
yep.
And the day after the interview was supposed to happen, I called them up and made a lie. I lied to them and told them that I had gotten called back to the Air Force Base for some paperwork that wasn't done and I couldn't make it. They agreed to interview me again, so I came back for the interview. I got the job. And I showed up. I had to steal a car to get to work. I woke up in a dorm with a girl that wasn't my wife. Anyway, I'm giving you too much information here. You get the picture.
This is why it gets long.
And I can't. Anyway, here's what happened. I show up drunk, and the guy like knows, but he doesn't like send me home. He's kind of lets me sweep floors and do stuff. And I worked the next week for 5 days, and then I just didn't show up, and I went to treatment. And so I worked there 6 days. Showed up drunk the first day. I get out of treatment, and I'm thinking about some elaborate story I can tell this guy on why I've been gone for a month. And people in AA said, "No, you're just telling him the truth." I'm like, "Whoa, no." You know what? I told the guy the truth, and he let me come back to work. And so, and I told him the truth, about where I was at and what was going on. So he knew. There were only a few co-workers there, and they knew. But I explained to that guy what happened, and I thought it was one of the craziest things anybody ever told me to do. But you know what? It worked out great. I worked there a long time.
Yeah.
So I would think that in most cases, you would want to let them know as soon as possible. But in some cases, that might not be prudent. That's why good sponsorship, or even just people in AA that have experience with stuff like that, you should consult with them.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. When I got out, my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous is I did not even crack the big book open until 7 years. So I was in meetings, the whole makers make it, all of that, very involved in the home group, very involved in service, in the fellowship, rocking that side of the triangle. Like nailed it, but nothing else. And I don't know whether I didn't hear it or if it wasn't there or whatever, but it was sit around the table and I would talk about my problems and nobody stopped me.
Yeah.
I reached out to a sponsor, asked her to sponsor me. It was really more like a mother figure, and there was no step work. There was no opening the book. There was none of that. She gave me direction to get on my knees. And because I said, I want to drink every day. Something's got to give here. I'm going to get drunk. It's coming. Like I knew it. So get on your knees and say, God, help me stay sober. Thank you for keeping me sober today and help keep me sober tomorrow. That's all I did. And the obsession was lifted at 9 months. And then we get to a 4-step, which wasn't even there was no fourth column. It was kind of a list of all the things I felt bad about in my life. There was some relief, and we burned it, which I really, really wish I said.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So spiritual.
And then she turns around and my mom was in the program at the time, and she tells my mother the worst thing on my 4-step. And So I was done with sponsorship and anything having to do with AA. But yet I had met my husband, who's my husband now. Had met him, and where I'm in the fellowship, and this is my new life. I had left the old one behind. I'm not hanging out with the old friends, didn't want to. So I didn't have a sponsor for 6 years, 5, 6 years. And then I met um, this woman, Valerie, and we opened the book, and she took me through word by word, line by line, and we did everything, and my whole life changed. So why am I telling you this? How does this fit in with two employers? I don't know. I think because I didn't have any idea, I didn't have any really good direction around any of it.
Right.
So I was very lost and like kind of trying to figure it out on my own, which sucks, but was whatever. It worked eventually.
Shank, you got more questions?
I do. My
Well,
next question is, have you ever suggested an employer read this chapter in the big book?
I have.
Did
Yeah,
your
as a matter, what's that?
your own employer, you suggested that they read it, or you
Yeah,
just
so when I got that job back after I'd worked there for 6 days, it was suggested from people in A that I give my boss a copy of the big book. And I didn't even really know him much. And so I gave him a copy of the big book and just told him that this is what I'm going to be doing, and there's some chapters in here that might help you. And he accepted it and he read it. And I was telling Shank before we started recording, that guy became a really good friend of mine, still is today. And he supported me through early recovery. He as an employer, he let me kind of go to lunch meetings sometimes, and he would let me do things at night, and or he would make sure that I was, off. I don't think he needed to do that, but he did. And he even came to some anniversaries, AA anniversaries. He's non-alcoholic. And then even as I progressed in that company and had other bosses, I had two guys that I worked for most of the time I was there. The new boss I got, it was the same thing. When he started working for me, I had a conversation with him, and I'd been sober years at this point. I had a conversation with him about, my membership in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I gave him a copy of the big book. And he come to find out that his dad was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and so he knew a lot about it. And I think it's important for us to do that. I know that it's kind of frowned upon today, and I know a lot of people I work with, they're scared to death to do anything like that. But it's never hurt me.
Right.
It's done nothing but help me.
Yeah, and I think if that it was my father, who was an alcoholic, who at the time was telling me he was sober, but he really wasn't sober. It just came out pretty recently that the entire time he was drinking, the entire time.
Wow.
Wow.
Clean about it. He's never been in Alcoholics Anonymous. He went to treatment for 90 days, and he has, I think, 2 years right now. But so a little bit of a different situation. I thought he was in AA. I thought he was sober, and so it wouldn't have occurred to me to even mention it. But I also, to be
Right.
honest, again, I hadn't cracked the big book, so I had no idea what was in there. I didn't
Yeah.
even there was a chapter called to employers. So I have recommended this to other business owners in my circle that have had people, with showing issues or potential issues or something. So I have done that. And I think it should be done more, and it should not be frowned upon, because the answers are right in there, just like in all the other chapters. The directions are in there, what to do with the employee, the answers are in
Yeah.
there. It's laid out right there in very simple terms, so that somebody that does not have this affliction that we have can understand it.
Yeah. Now, Shank, you were hiding from people a little bit, weren't you?
Well, I was, but
I don't mean that in a negative way. Just, I mean,
so I had lived in North Carolina for about 6 months before I got sober or something like that. And I was I was completely honest with my employer because I couldn't come to work because I was in jail. So
well,
Good reason.
that's a good reason to
um
not go.
and I guess I could have just said any other reason, but I was honest. And I was just like, hey, I have a problem with alcohol. I've been in this car wreck. I've committed crimes. I don't know what's going to happen. And really, they said I'd worked for them, I don't know, for several months at that point, helped them open a salon. And, they're like, hey, take all the time you need. And so you know, took about 5 weeks for those. I was in treatment. And when I came back, the old timers that I was surrounded by, a couple of them did tell me, they didn't believe me that my employer knew I was in treatment and all of that. And they were like, you need to give them a copy of this book. And that was something I was actually being honest about, but I was like too scared to just like give them the book. So I left it in like their office with like a little note on it.
That
And
counts.
Mhm.
like I didn't want to see them face to face, but they knew that I needed certain days off to go to AA meetings. And, I can't remember exactly what I shared. I'm pretty positive I overshared probably with them. Um, about what was going on. But what that led to is I was honest with them, and they gave me, nights off to go to my home group. That does mean that I had to work some undesirable hours, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
I was willing to do that. And, essentially they let me have a over a year off of work, go to prison, get out, now be a felon, convicted, all these other things, and work for them again. So, a lot of my coworkers didn't know, but they knew more about AA than even I knew, but they were drinking and doing drugs. So I was always really confused about that. They'd be like, "Oh, what? Oh, you gonna go to AA?" And I mean, my ears would perk up, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." But eventually, I was able through that to try to help some people, and I was able to manage some of their salons. And I had to work at some locations I didn't want to have the days off that I needed. But they were willing to work with me.
Mhm.
And eventually I was able to work, closer to home and all those kinds of things. Now, it was interesting because anytime someone would get in trouble with alcohol, they would come to me and be like, have this person do what you're doing. We want them to be an employee like you are, and like I've always had a
Yep.
good work ethic. So I don't know. They wanted me to do a DVD at one time because they were expanding. And like I was really, you know, I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't want to do it, but thank God I had good sponsorship. And I was like, they want me to do this DVD. I mean, I know I'm supposed to say yes to everything. And they're like, no, do not do that. Um, but it was encouraged for me to be open and honest with my employer. I was not, several of my coworkers knew, and while I was incarcerated, like my manager was writing to me. Her name was Janita. I still keep up with her today. Like she was just writing to me like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like um so there were people that knew and who still know today that they can reach out to me if they know someone that has a problem or if they have a problem.
Yeah. Well, they knew you were on the news, Shank. People knew.
They did know, okay? Like it
Yeah.
was not
High
as
profile drunk. That's
oh.
awesome. That's so cool.
Oh man. Hmm. What else you got?
So, how have you changed as an employee since getting sober and working the 12 steps?
And
Hmm.
I love this question. So I'll answer it from employee and employer side because they both, I think it's important. As an employee, I mean, I could show up. I wasn't stealing anymore. I wasn't dealing drugs out of my office. Wasn't driving a company car loaded. I mean, it's like the basics get covered kind of immediately. But I could show up and I could contribute and I cared about like it was so bad. So the company's franchise. So I ran a little office. So I was nowhere near my dad or any managers or anything. So you're pretty autonomous in there. Um, and so I have a secretary and I'm seeing patients. I'm in healthcare and I'm showing up like hammered and I'm like in people's ears
Wow.
with sharp objects, like so many things could have gone wrong. I mean,
Hmm.
uh, and I would just blow off the day. Like I'd have a whole schedule of patients scheduled that need help. They need service. They need me. And I'd call in and just reschedule the day, to over so many times. My poor reception. That's probably why I couldn't hold on to receptionist. It was a revolving door because they were so sick of it. And then patients started leaving and going to a competitor because why wouldn't they? You know, like I would do the same thing. So I was not dependable. I was stealing from the company, all that stuff. So that all that changed immediately. And I started being responsible. I started showing up early. I felt better, all those things at the beginning. And I really cared about and fell in love with my career. And I initially was just doing it for the money to get, it was a means to an end so that I could keep doing what I wanted to do. It wasn't about what am I really doing here? I'm changing someone's life, and it's pretty cool. So I think from and I realized that my work ethic was like great, insane. Like I just won't stop. And if I am engaged and I enjoy what I'm doing, I will go at it until and I'm also very competitive. So, and it's a sales organization. So I had to beat everybody, you know, I had to win every month and all.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but that's a blessing and a curse, I think, of a lot of us. But from an employer standpoint, I went through long into sobriety even. I was a hard ass. Everybody was afraid of me, and I loved it. I got a lot of power out of that, man. That felt good. They're afraid of me. You'll do whatever I ask you to do. I didn't know any of their families. I didn't know their kids. I didn't know their spouse. I didn't really want to know. I didn't care. I was so self-absorbed with what can you get from me? So just because I put the drink and the drugs down, that didn't change. It got worse actually, with how I was treating people. And I couldn't see it because I was all about the end result of producing the numbers at the end of the month, you know? And I was playing favorites and all this, this stuff. And then when I went through and I'm working my way up through the company, now I'm managing the team, and then I took on, you know, bought part of the company, and I was also running the company the way that my dad ran it. So I just was like, well, I don't know anything about running a company, but if I just run it the way he ran it, then I should turn out okay. And financially, yes, that was true. But from a human perspective, when I went through the process of the 12 steps out of the big book, that completely changed. I wrote a work ethic, and I thought that was what do I want to get out of this company, you know? And no, it's how do I want God to mold me as an employee? How do I want to show up as an employee? What should that look like? That's different than it looks now. And it was very different. What came out of that was I want to be kind. I want to care about people. I want to know who these people are. I want to help them. And I started treating them like humans and not employees, you know, and they started trusting me, and they stopped leaving me because I was having employees leave and get together and come up with their own little, you know, competitive business over here, filing but not compete and all this shit. And like, God, what did I do? You know, like, well, just some of it I did. But after that, I became like, I was friends with them. I mean, once you know you have a really good employee, and they're on board with you on the direction you're trying to go and grow. And I started learning about them and their families and what's important to them. And I started breaking these rules, you know, it has to be this way, this way, and this way. And all of a sudden I'm going all outside the boundaries of my rules. And I mean, it was an HR nightmare, but I was the HR department too. So I just like, I'm treating this, whatever. So I, as a result of that, got to walk through incredibly dark times with people in their life, going through cancer, going through deaths of children, going through, and just saying, whatever you need, take off work. I didn't think they weren't lying to me. They weren't making it up. They were genuinely having trouble, and I could show up and help them. And it didn't matter that they weren't selling. It didn't matter. I figured out how to fix that problem and hold the space for them. So, and the success of the company went through the roof, directly proportional to how I could show up. And ask God to show me, give me the words, God, because I want to scream and yell at this person right now, even though I know it won't work. So, you know, I had to apply spiritual principles in all to my life. And I was not doing that. I was bringing God over here, but not over here, no, not over there, you know. And I was afraid to, because I was afraid that God didn't want me doing what I was doing, and I was loving what I was doing, and making all these gains in my life as a result of it. And so I was afraid to let it. Plus, I thought I had it all figured out. Why do I need God? Can't you see how great this is going? Like, I'm good. And I wasn't good, because I was treating people like crap. I mean, so I don't know if I'm way off topic with that, but it changed everything. And as a result, I just sold the company and retired 10 years before I ever thought that I would, and have this freedom today, and walk away from this group of people that were so upset that I was leaving. We can't do this without you, kind of. I'm not saying this because of egomania, but I was so close with them that it ripped them apart. And I was like, God, I did something right here.
Yeah.
I did something right.
Well, when you apply spiritual principles in all areas of your life, it's amazing what can happen. I worked on airplanes, extremely intoxicated, Shank, and jacked up on cocaine.
Yeah.
And I mean, some pretty detailed work on airplanes that people actually flew on. And I never once gave a thought that people actually flew on those planes, that I might be jeopardizing their safety.
Mhm.
So when I got sober and got a different job, I mean, the steps obviously helped me with some basic things like showing up on time and working hard. I mean, both of my parents, even with all their flaws, they were extremely hard workers, and they taught me that. So, I mean, that obviously changed, showing up on time and actually doing the work that they pay me to do. But I like this statement in the book. It says, it's on page 141 in this chapter. It says, this is not to say that all alcoholics are honest and upright when not drinking.
Mm.
Because,
Yeah, tell us about that.
I started stealing money from work. So this guy, takes a chance on me at a treatment, gives me the job back, and I start doing work and pocketing the money and doing fictitious warranty claims and keeping money. There's lots to it. If you want to know how to do it, I can tell you later. And so, but now I'm working my butt off the whole time I'm doing that. But because of the steps and because of, I mean, I know it sounds contradictory, even though you're being dishonest in one area. I still was very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was very active in step work and helping other people. I think that's why I was able to, at between 3 and 5 years sober, I popped out of it and I got honest about it, and actually, made a plan and went back to my employer and made an amends for stealing money and stuff. And it's the same guy I gave the big book to.
Yeah.
Right? And you know what? I mean, I got through it. I paid the money back. I did not get fired. But what happened to me was I really realized that we're supposed to practice principles everywhere, and that AA is a way of life. And when I like literally started taking the steps and even the traditions to work, I mean, my career there it blasted off. And I started trying to treat the way I looked at it was I started treating work and people at work the same way I treated my home group and people in AA.
Bingo.
And when I did that and actually showed that much like consideration and like willingness to serve at work, it was incredible what happened. And I mean, it's actually so simple. We just miss it. And if we let fear and ego and image and what we think other people are thinking get in the way of us really growing and being successful, and not just monetarily, just with relationships with people and, just being free. And so, I mean, that's what happened to me was I started being more of a giver at work and not a taker. And I wasn't afraid to teach anybody or coach anybody on anything that I'd learned. It's kind of like in AA, we that the shrapnel, keep what you have by giving it away. It's the same thing at work. There's nothing to protect. I mean, there's nothing that you got to hold on to. You just give it all away to people, and it comes back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ego is such a powerful thing now, man. It's incredible.
Ego Your ego is not your amigo.
Good
I mean,
one.
it's something that was interesting for me is I always was a really hard worker. But after getting sober, after cleaning some things up, being incarcerated, all of that, and I went back to work, I started to do my job just as it was outlined, and like when before, like if it was, oh, you want to upsell this service or suggest hair product or whatever it was. I learned through AA that like I'm not going to be driven just by money, but if someone needs something, I'm going to make a suggestion, and whether they take it or not is on them, but I made the suggestion to try to help them. And that's something that just seemed so silly. It seemed so silly to me, like, but why am I going to do that? Like, I don't care about selling any of this stuff really. Like, I'm just hoping one day I don't have to deal with this. What happened is like I was the on the leaderboard every single week. Everyone was always annoyed by it. And it was just me constantly saying, like, here is the outline of what they give us to do.
Yeah.
It works. Okay. Like I'm just doing A, B, and C. I'm not
Follow
forcing
it.
anyone to do anything. I'm just making suggestions here, if they do it or not. And then these people trust me and want to come back to me. So I'm just doing exactly as this is outlined for me from the owners. And that really it taught me a lot in just doing what I'm supposed to be doing and not fighting things that I don't understand. Now, what that led to was, I didn't want to be an employee anymore because there were a lot of other things in Alcoholics Anonymous that I wanted to do and be a part of, and I just couldn't given the schedule that I had. And so I was able to move on from that, stay in my career, and just be able to do my own thing. And so I'm really glad that I've had these experiences with employers, with people willing to help me, being willing to help others, because had I not had that experience, had Alcoholics Anonymous not taught me all of this, I wouldn't be able to be in the position where I am now and like really work when I'm at work and plan my life around Alcoholics Anonymous and my commitments there because I've never had to go without. I mean, I don't, I tend to err more on the side of financial insecurity. And so I can get really fearful if I'm not working every Saturday or whatever the big ticket day is. Um, and when I've learned, God always works that out when I'm doing what
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be doing. So I've never had to go without.
Yeah, just being a worker among workers. I mean, even though I was, landed in the in charge position, I shifted somewhere along the way to we're all here. There's no hierarchy. We're all on the same, here's the goal, here's what we're trying to do. We're going to do it with love and compassion to the best of our ability. Let's go, And so and when I got sober, I would have never even that thought would have never even come into my head. Like, I'm not interested in that. I'm in charge. You're down here. This is how this is going to go. Like complete shift of mindset.
Yeah. This chapter gives a lot of good instruction also on how to help people, how to 12-step people. Just the basic instructions are just great on how to just treat people, and it's not outdated
No,
at all.
every time I had a situation with someone, and in my case, it took me a while before I could see it, because I had employees that were, 300 miles away from me in an office and I'm not around them, but I'm hearing stuff and I'm seeing stuff. And, when an employee says, "Hey, this guy has a mattress in the spare office in the back," and I'm like, "Whoa, why is there a mattress?" Like, okay, I need to start asking some questions. But I read the directions in the book, and my sponsor said, "Read the directions and do what it says." And I had
Yeah.
the last chance agreement. That's what you do. So I had that all pre-printed, and ready to present it to this person, have a talk about their whether they have a problem, whether they think they have a problem, whether they want to get help. Laid out that I would help them, laid out that I would pay for it, and they would reimburse me in their paychecks. Exactly how I did it. Because, at that point, people are financially in trouble and whatever. And then I put the last chance agreement and say, this is it, you got one shot. So I will do this, I will hold the job, I will, help you financially, I'll help your family financially if we need to do that. But this is it. You come back and you relapse and it happens again and we part ways. And have
That's
some,
right out of the book.
yeah, that's what I did.
Mhm.
And it
Yep.
with two of them, I mean, it worked beautifully, and they were my top two employees in the company.
Yeah.
And I would go to the end of the earth for them, and they would for me. And
Yeah.
the other two happened to be my assistant, and so I was really blocked with like I knew if I lose my assistant, it lands on me, like a huge amount of work. There's nobody else to do it. So and this was wrong, but I put it off and pretended like I didn't see it. Like, oh God, not this. Like maybe it's not that bad. And then the DUI
Yeah.
start and all the and neither one of those assistants, they both said, no, I don't have a problem. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Should have followed instructions a little better. Shank, let's move on to meeting shrapnel.
All right. It is now time for our segment of Meeting Shrapnel, which is our segment of lore, myth, and sayings frequently heard in AA.
All right, Julie, get ready.
So far, this
Got it.
season, I don't believe we've kept any shrapnel. Is that right?
We have scrapped everything.
All right. It's not looking too good today either. Our first
No.
Meeting Shrapnel is we get a front row seat to the greatest show on earth.
Let's get ready to
What do you think, Julie?
I mean, I'm in the greatest show on earth is how I look at that. Like what's the front row seat mean? Like I'm watching it and I'm not a part of it? Like what I don't
That's a good point.
That's why we're asking you. We don't know. You ever heard this one?
somewhere, yes, actually. I just
Yeah.
was it's really insane actually. If you, I'm in it. I'm in the greatest show. You know, like it's a part of my daily life.
So
Yeah.
you're not a spectator in that. You're in it.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Okay.
I was a spectator before I was actually working the steps. So maybe this would apply when you first get out of treatment and you're sitting there, haven't done anything except go to a meeting. You're watching the greatest show on earth, but it shouldn't last very long if you're doing this, as outlined.
Well, I heard somebody say this recently at a convention talk. That same person also uses the term your amigo. Your ego is not your amigo. So I mean, it's a funny, silly statement that's probably sounds cool in AA, but I don't know. It's just, I don't get it.
It makes me a little itchy, scratchy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, again, it cheapens the message of AA and makes us feel like we're a bunch of freaks or something. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about it, Shank?
This was just not the case for me when I was newly sober. I felt like I was in my worst freaking nightmare ever. And I didn't want to drink. Like, I was relieved of the obsession to drink. However, I was just like, my life is going to be bad for a long time and this sucks. So, don't love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Julie, what do you think? You want to keep it or scrap it?
Grab it.
I'm going to scrap it.
It's out of here. Our next meeting shrapnel is attitude of gratitude.
I'd like you guys to go first on this because I don't.
Whoa, Julie, no.
Oh, is that the rules? Or I go first? Okay.
Well, not always. I mean, I'll go first.
I don't know.
Just don't start telling us what to do. Remember, you're retired.
That's right. I don't call the shots anymore in any part of my life. It's all gone. Good God. It's hard. I'm
Tell the truth, Julie.
I'm working with a life coach right now, and one of the things she's having me do, because through the transition and some other upcoming things I've got going on, but is wake up in bed as soon as I wake up and smile
Mhm.
and start listing the things I'm grateful for as I'm smiling. And it feels so asinine, but nobody can see me. And like as I'm going to the bathroom or getting coffee, and it has been really helpful for me. So I don't know if that's an attitude of gratitude or what there's a lot of things I have to do to get the gratitude. It doesn't just happen. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's like without God, I'm not grateful. I'm where's mine? That's how I show up,
Yeah.
So with God, I don't know, but I've never, I don't know what else to say. But,
keep that attitude of gratitude, Julie.
I mean, but that doesn't, there's so much more to it. If
That's-
what I'm trying to get at. Like, it's not like I can just wake up and say, oh, I'm grateful and then everything's okay. Like, it's not okay. Like,
Right.
I am I'm delusional and I'm selfish and self-centered at my core, with or without alcohol. I don't show up grateful to anything without God. I mean, I just don't.
Yeah. In general, the idea of having an attitude of gratitude is a good idea. I think there are cases when you're working with somebody in the program to get them to focus on gratitude, and that, but it needs to be done in the right way. Just, throwing a funny statement at somebody, hey, I get an attitude of gratitude, or if somebody's really dealing with some heavy stuff, to tell them to go make a gratitude list. I mean, or text me your gratitude list every night. I just don't think that stuff, there's any depth and weight in that. It's all froth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think trying to be grateful is important, but the term.
Yeah, and I don't get it without working with others. I mean, that's when it happens for me the most. And whether it's working with people in AA or being of service anywhere in life, even if it's the grocery checkout person, whatever it is, that I'm out of myself, that's when I get the gratitude feeling.
Yeah. Shank, you got any thoughts on this one?
I have a lapel pin that says attitude of gratitude.
You do.
Should have worn it.
That I was gifted, and there was someone in our area, is that right? That was kind of his saying.
Hal M.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I did not ever know him, but I know a lot of people really loved and respected him. From what I've heard, he had worked at 12 Steps and he helped others, so that's probably where his attitude of gratitude came from. Similar to kind of what you all have said, I think that just as this just is not in any AA literature for me, and it's kind of, this reminds me of like acceptance is the answer to all of my problems.
It's similar.
Like that is someone's experience from their story, and like attitude of gratitude, maybe someone's experience from their story, but it is not mine.
Yeah.
Like I have to be taking actions in a lot of them to remain grateful, and I don't need to tell people about how grateful and humble and amazing and how much service I do, because I find when I'm doing that, that's arrogance,
Yep.
And I will shut it down if people start sending me, this is probably opening the door, but their gratitude list every morning and every evening, I will shut it down and say, please just give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you, but do not send me these messages every morning. Thank you. Have a great day.
Now listen, I'm gonna expect you to be wearing that lapel pin tomorrow night.
Okay, I'll put it on. I'll try to remember.
You gotta put it on.
Do you lay that out to new sponsees? Like, here's how this is gonna go. Like, I don't want to hear about your gratitude. Don't send me a list.
If necessary, I sure will.
I'm just curious.
Now, Julia, you gonna keep it or scrap it?
I think scrap it now that it's more in context for me. Yeah.
Did you have something else to say about it?
No,
No.
I think as a whole, it's a good statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For life in general, walking through your life, alcoholic or not, it's a good thing. But it doesn't just automatically fix everything.
Yeah. All right. I'm scrapping it.
All right, scrap it.
I'm scrapping it. It's out of here.
What's next?
Our third meeting shrapnel for today is my mind is a bad neighborhood. I don't go there alone. Have you heard this one, Julie?
Yeah. Versions of it. There's different flavors of the same thing floating around, and I mean, I don't go there alone. I'm in my. I think it's really ridiculous. If you, my mind can't fix my mind. I like that one better. Like I don't.
That's accurate.
And so without God's help, I'm. It's always going to be a bad neighborhood. But it's I don't know what else to say about this. Really. Like, I mean, it's
Who would you take with you? I mean,
right? Who would I take with me?
right. I mean, I've heard this.
Yeah.
It's
I've
straight
heard it a
out of
lot.
it's straight out of like treatment centers, I think. And
Mhm.
to me, it reminds me of like Stinking Thinking one, and it just makes it seem like we're always sick, and that we're
Right.
not going to get better, and that you're always going to like be bad, or like I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's
Well,
just
it goes against
fear based.
the 11th step, which is talking about intuitive thought and all of that kind of stuff. It's directly opposite of that. Like the whole goal of this is to get to a place where we feel led and we feel guided and we trust the nudges. That's the goal. So my mind is not, if it's God-centered, it is not a bad neighborhood. I have some
That's right.
ideas that I need to run past a sponsor on a regular basis. But if I have been transformed as a result of the 12 steps, then it should not be a bad neighborhood.
Matter of fact, the book says after the 9th step, we start thinking sanely and normally.
Exactly.
Is that like not true? Now it comes and goes for me, but but it's there.
I did have a sponsor that would get very upset if I didn't tell her every single detail of every single thing and every decision I ever made. And so she didn't ever say this specifically, but kind of versions of it, that like I needed to be running it by her, and like, I couldn't make decisions, and it just felt like really weird and gross to me. Like I have God consciousness today, and it's not that I'm making any huge decisions without consulting people, because of course, like sometimes I can get very indignant about what I think should happen and how it should happen and things like that. But yeah, it was just like a very weird thing to have someone want that from me. And that just makes me want to never tell you anything ever again. Thank you very much, which is not...
That's a bad neighborhood, Shank.
It's not like the right response to have. But I do believe and that woman did also tell me that I needed to go to God constantly. I was always pointed to God, and I really appreciate that, because I do need to spend a lot of time in prayer and meditation. And sometimes the things that I do, specifically concerning family, it doesn't look the way I would like for it to look, but it is the way that it is. So anyway, I hate this one. I think it's so dumb.
Yeah, it is actually.
Julie, you gonna keep it or scrap it?
Scrapping it for sure.
I'm scrapping it.
It's out of here. Gone.
All right.
3 for 3 out of here.
Man, those catchphrases are not doing well this season.
They sure are not.
None
Probably a
have-
good thing.
None have been saved. Not one.
No,
Right.
just read the book. Julie, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience. It's been great having you.
Yeah. So good to be here. So fun to sit and chat with you guys. Really.
Yep. And if you're out there, we've said it before, people like to avoid some of these chapters in the book, but this chapter is not outdated. It's got a lot of good information in it on how to be free.
Freedom.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. If you have a comment, suggestion, or just need help, you can email Shank and Wayne at freedom@alcoholicsalive.com. Remember, we're recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do we get paid. Join us next week for another great episode.